Welcome to Here is Where We Meet, an original podcast series produced by Tank.
I'm Michael Morris.
And I'm James Lingwood, and you're listening to Here is Where We Meet, a series of conversations with just a few of the artists we worked with across 3 decades as co-directors of Artangel, producing extraordinary art in particular places across London, the UK, and beyond. Today we're joined by Yto Barrada to talk about her collaborative projects in Morocco and across the Arab world, and in particular the Mothership, a meeting place in Tangier, which has been developed with Artangel over recent years, where artists and artisans, botanists, ecologists, and enthusiasts can explore the colour-filled world of natural dyes. So, Yto, you're in London for a few days, but on your way to Tangier to check on the developments for your long-term project there called the Mothership. Mm-hmm. So what are your plans for the Mothership?
The Mothership is a garden. It's a project. It's an idea in progress. I think it's an idea about the future. It's an idea about giving space, time to other people who can come and work around the dye garden that I've been using. And I've been teaching around that dye garden every summer, and I'd like that season to be extended to the rest of the year where other people can benefit from it. For a local artist to have a small grant to be able to have time out of the working day job agenda to thrive in this garden and this isolated place in the middle of the city. So the first residents were Moroccan artists, different disciplines, people interested in ideas of Amazigh futurism, someone like Nourdine Zarraf, who is a writer, a painter, does also drawing, thinks and writes beautifully, and he has this whole reflexive work about using natural dyes, about imaginary and speculative futures, using drawings, using local folk history. Another artist that was there last summer is a musician who became a painter during COVID, George Clinton, the founder of Funkadelic Parliament. Who's a young painter and who's colorblind. So to work with someone who doesn't see colors but has a very strong determination in deciding which one. So I had to label the colors he was working with.
There are a great number of layers and elements to the Mothership, and I'm interested in knowing whether you conceived everything at the start or you've allowed it to grow in whichever way it needed to grow. What was the first sort of building block?
I had a definitive plan, and it's still what it is. No, of course not. It's absolutely non-linear, and it's meant to be that way, because I have been running projects for a long time, and I built the Cinematheque with friends 17, 18 years ago. Had a kid at the same time, and did my own art practice. So I know a little bit about the constraints of running a sustainable organization and making and responding to all the needs of the grant writing and the agendas, and having your agenda meet the agenda of the organizations that can support you. This project existed for a long time before it existed. I just wanted to share my house. I moved out of Tangier and Morocco about 10 years ago with my family to go to the city where my husband's from, moved to Brooklyn. The summer house in Tangier was still there. My parents live next door. It's an extraordinary place. It's modest, but it's huge because it's a garden and a forest. And in a place where the biodiversity is disappearing all around the coast, because Tangier, this former dormant city, is the next big thing and attracting a lot of developers and investors from the local government, from the central government in the capital. gardens have disappeared. The only private gardens, my neighbor, you have some few beautiful gardens, but those are private. So I tried to think of two things: having something that continues the Cinematheque. So we have this beautiful 2 screening rooms in the main square of the city, a 300-seat theater and a 50-seat theater. And I wanted also to continue challenging the programming, bringing artists, which is a little bit of our interest, but not our strong side. We do a lot of educational programs with children, classic cinema, and world cinema. And so supporting after COVID, wanting to support local artists that need time to be not immediately productive. I was also interested in botanical literacy, and I've learned a lot by taking classes in dyes, learning about natural dyes, and then planting the garden. So you have all these empirical bits and pieces that are put together, and then meeting James and working with Artangel, and having also to answer to his exigencies and to the need for a timeline, the need for things as strange as having my work represented in the library and a place for my legacy. And that, well, I passed 50 now, so I can hear him. But we started this conversation a long time ago, and in the beginning, I thought it was a useless thing. And now having the idea that my books and my archive, the same way the Cinematheque has all my film archives, having a home for these, it sounds less like vanity today. It sounds like something.
In my recollection, it was more about wanting to have what you talked about, your colour archive. So to have not just a place of making, but somewhere where, if you like, some of the evidence of your research was present, was what I was interested in. Because I don't know, even with the Mothership, whether it's a project by you, whether we call it your work.
That's definitely, yeah. It's definitely my work. It's an in situ installation of a home that opens, or a garden, around a dye garden. The dye garden, we know, we make plans, we plant, but we don't know what's going to come out. So the Mothership is in sort of mirror companion to, you plan a certain number and you're going to fail 20%. That's the figures for garden. And it's an endless project, because you meet this person that needs to come and work. Now I'm thinking a lot of working with scientists. I'd like the biochemistry of dyes. Like I can teach indigo dyeing, and I keep saying indigo is the only invisible and insoluble dyes. I don't know why. I still don't. Maybe my 9-year-old can explain it to me. I need biochemists. And I'd love to work with scientists in Morocco who don't know about textile conservation, who don't know about, and have this two groups of artists and scientists be together for workshops in the garden. The other thing is I'm very much interested in the direct application of the research on dyes. I don't want to be working only on writing about making paints. I want the application to be immediate. I want to work with a screen print project with Hicham Bouzid and Think Tangier and Compagnons de Route, who we've been working with for a long time. I want to go to their print shop, and I want to start working immediately, foraging with them, looking at what is sustainable in the forest and everywhere in the trash that's available, making colors right away. I also would like to do that with film, since we have a cinema, and think about the applications that we can do in film development using
application of colour.
Color, and also natural products with color. The combination of the two. The questions around the ecology, art and ecology, and the question of finding sustainable. We're the 6 years of drought in Tangier, so it's a very tense environment to be thinking of a garden and planting and making things. So to make sense, we have to be very quick in attracting people to think with us about the urgencies, but also the research and the discoveries and the application have to be as exciting as the things we are making.
The work seems to be the creation of a community of participants of different kinds who are all feeding into the next phase, the next stage. The community that you created in the Cinematheque was a community of viewers and makers, I would say. Is there a way in for a member of the public to come and experience the Mothership in any form? Or is it still a research centre now?
In Tangier, people love to walk to the forest on weekends, and whole families go picnic all the way up in the mountain, and we are on that road. On weekends in the summer, we'll just open our door, which is quite easy, and then people can just do a tour. We're next to a very, very big, famous park. So to have people coming back, we're on the Fisherman's Road, also lovers stroll in that direction. So that's one way. And then our partnership with an existing community. Of course, we're working with the Cinematheque community and my artistic community. And then the Cinematheque new generation. I've been gone for 10 years, but there's a lot of younger people, older and younger, from people who moved in from other cities that I didn't know. And then we have partners in Casablanca and Rabat and Marrakesh doing similar or different things that we are very close to. And now the train being fast. It's people come for 3 days if we have a conference or a workshop. We've noticed the mobility of artists. And locally, I think our main public will be through the partner nonprofits we work with, like Think Tangier, the Cinematheque. They have an audience in underserved communities and neighborhoods that are far from the center that they have a whole practice with during the whole year. And we will just be in other new program. And having that trust and that interest through already a constellation of our history and our archive, because that's what it is.
And your home as well.
Yes, and my life.
Yes.
And so
there's an integration, it seems, of all the aspects of your
our
life.
Connecting dots that exist already, yeah. And all the new ones that we didn't think about. There's a lot of people, there's expats, but there's lots of repats. There's lots of people from the European immigration coming home because Morocco offers jobs and a quality of living and the challenge of things to be built. So something that was, these kids, we had to be dragged home for the summer. Now many are coming and bringing their spouts or European partners. There's huge things to make and do and change. So I think we have work to do, and that's exciting. It's hard and it's exciting.
Do you think of Tangier and this place as home?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. My mother would kill me if I say going home to New York.
Well, a lot of your life you've lived.
I think about Tangier all the time.
Right.
I've lived around the world, but yeah, if it rains, I think of Tangier. If it doesn't rain, I think of Tangier. Because when it rains, we're supposed to say it's a blessing. In New York, people complain about the rain, and it's horrible. So yeah, I'm still very attached to the rhythms, the seasons, the wisteria, the day it blooms, I get a call, you missed it. It was yesterday. and the dye community, because natural dyes is a little bit fashionable, but it completely disappeared. There's little pockets around the world. And it's very labor intensive. It's incredible. The colors are irreplaceable. The depth, it's like when you taste fantastic food for the first time. You can compare the depth of the color, the materiality, the beauty, the gloss, the resonance, everything is very, very different. And also it's like entering a circle of witchcraft. It feels incredibly powerful. And being a photographer, it also has to do with the darkroom because you work into figuring out recipes that you share. It's a very copy-left community. You can call a master dyer and ask, and he'll give you, if you have a problem, you can't get the right black, you've tried, and he'll tell you, try the recipe backwards.
And it feels that the generosity of the project is in that story. There's just generosity.
But the textile community that I know of, where I learned what the little I learned in Brooklyn, the Textile Art Center taught me everything, and a lot of the friends from there are partners in the project today, like Isa Rodriguez.
Were you making dyes or making work from dyes there, or?
When I moved to New York, I was looking for. So I didn't have many friends, and the work drives your life. So there's not a lot of pauses between work. And when I had time off, I would go to Morocco. So I was looking for a text or a community that I could, just enter in. And as strange as it sounds, because learning to weave in Morocco, we have fantastic weavers, but I never learned. I signed up for this artisan residence. The other candidates were fantastic people who went to SCAD in Georgia, so who were already very savvy in their practice with surface design or textile. They could make lace, they were embroiderers, they know how to use the machine. I knew nothing. I had a series of photographs about smugglers of textile. I wanted to make smuggler clothes. But I was totally incompetent, except I was a mid-career artist, and the others were just out of college. So I think I guess the appeal was I was older, which is, I think, a great thing. And that's one attraction for me at the Mothership, is to also have people who have kids, who have a history, who are older and don't fit in the classic residencies you can find in the world. So I took many classes, and one class, I remember, it was Natalie Stopka's class. It was natural dyes. And at one point, she started speaking about the competition for blue and the trade and the colonial history of colors. And I remember my head spinning.
So that was a light bulb moment,
completely.
Was it?
And I remember, it was exhilarating. It was like that Setsigalobe text where he talks about textile being at the crossroad of the history of labor and the history of feminist resistant movement and architecture in industrial England, and that thing of everything you love. I've always been my grandma. I don't know if I told you, my grandma was an embroiderer, and they sold everything. So there's this lost treasure because they needed the money to raise the almost 15 kids that my maternal grandmother had. So there's always been this idea that this was a very precious trade, and it's been a lost trade, the textile. So yes, I think that's the moment where I said, I'm spending the rest of my life working with this.
I mean, in addition to your commitment to this project and, community of makers, you've been involved in other projects outside of Morocco. I mean, you worked for the Arab Image Foundation for quite a while.
Almost 15 years.
Which was, where were you doing that work from, and what were you doing with?
I was a board member from the early beginnings. I was still at school when they started in 96. I was at ICP that year. And Fouad El-Khouri was my mentor in photography, and he founded with Samar Moadad and Akram Zartari, the Lebanese nonprofit. That's why I'm not I wasn't a member in the beginning. And it was interesting. It was very interesting, the evolution, even the conceptual evolution, from early on in the beginning, saying there's huge blind spots in the history of photography. How come all the classics have no chapters on any of the countries we come from? And we're all photo collectors. We know there's incredible industrial photography. We know there's incredible portrait photography. The Armenians who came after the 1917 genocide brought photography to Jerusalem, Beirut. We know there's a whole history, and it's not there. And then we know private photographers, women like Mary Khazem, Garçon, and all the studios. So there was sort of an idea in the beginning of Montrez Patte Blanche, to show that we also did interesting things and you forgot about us. Very quickly, that whole group, which also evolved and changed, started working very seriously in revealing the major figures of the history of the photography from, this whole space that we covered, which was the Arab world and its diaspora. So you had the Mexican diaspora, the Arabs who went to Brazil and Mexico, and then you had the ones who went to work in the reconstruction of Europe after the war, so mostly working class, but they had a photographic memory. The professional, and I would participate once a year in our big debates, and where we would decide what to do, and disagree, and it was very interesting.
When you're aware of these things potentially disappearing, you can't
It's hard.
let that happen.
It's hard. It's very hard to not feel the responsibility because you know how to do it. And I think working in archives and organizing, cleaning up, it's hard with my own stuff.
Does it reach all the way back to the fact that at a certain point before you were an artist, you studied history?
Probably.
And,
I'm also the daughter of a mom who traveled a lot. I went to 12 schools. So my mom's huge. She's like, you're a keeper because you could keep nothing. We moved a lot.
So you're
my mom
a hoarder too.
I don't call it hoarding. When it's organized, it's a collection. You just need help for the organization. We're looking for interns at the Mothership. Anybody wants to do summer? You can also work at the Cinematheque. You can choose. You can start a podcast at the cinema in the cafe all summer. All the cool kids hang out there. No, I just, maybe.
I think it's that
I don't know.
You couldn't bear these things to be lost.
No,
You're
But Bettina's another story. I mean, the hotel put everything in the trash on Christmas morning. I've been working for almost 6 years, rehousing her archive, battling with her because she kept saying everything's stolen, and she lived among all these wonderful boxes of all her work. And maybe being an artist and having a support structure, having the family, having the galleries, having the museums and the curators and people who look at your work. Bettina, who was an extraordinary, talented, prolific, well-read, well-traveled figure, incredible. She was a textile designer. That was her self-taught artist, and that was her day job. And she made marble sculptures and wood sculptures and paintings and drawings, and photography was the central. She did photograms in her room with all the things she cut. And I was rehousing her archive while she was alive, giving a hand, trying to get the attention from the people I know, curators, museum, and nobody was interested. And I still, until today, people come to the studio and they can't believe that anybody showed up since 10 years. But Bettina was enraged. She was really upset. She didn't, I still don't understand. If you look at when did Louise Bourgeois have her first solo show? I mean, it's very common that women who are extraordinarily talented, Carmen Herrera had her first solo show at 101 in New York.
You're in London at the moment, and there's one place that your work was present for a short period of time, which is an exhibition called Unravel, and then you withdrew your work after a couple of weeks as an act of protest.
The rest of the title of the exhibition is The Power and Politics of Textiles and Art. Uh-huh. So the whole premise of the exhibition, which started at the end of February, at the Barbican, a fantastic exhibition around artists using textiles, fiber, and thread. My work isn't absent. It's a presence absent. There's a message of why we withdrew. I followed collectors that withdrew their work, and when I read that they were protesting against the censorship of a series of lectures from the London Review of Books, and the one that was censored by Protege Mishra was called The Show After Gaza, and it's available on print and online. And the reason why the Barbican censored it, the reason they gave was a question of not having the necessary care to, and in a logistical fallacious reason. I mean, this is not new. And where I come from, and if you've been paying attention, this is before the siege of Gaza and the ongoing and historical genocide that's happening. The censorship, I just remember that Centre Pompidou, Cinéma du Réel, a film by Eyal Sivan and Michel Khlefi. And I was Michel Khlefi's set photographer on the first film shot in Gaza 20 years ago, called The Tale of the Three Jewels. The film was censored at the Cinéma du Réel, and the French government had the second projection forbidden for questions of order and unease of people in the public. So in this time and age where there is these incredible massacres happening every day, the focus being on silencing artists. It happened with magazine, it happened at university, in Europe and America, and Germany especially. But in America, it's happening every day. So when you have that little bit of agency, and it was heartbreaking because it's a wonderful exhibition, and the curators are people I admire a lot, but and the work it's years of work to do a project like this. But I think that the scandal of not having a huge debate, the silence of the press especially. If you look at the 50 last wars, I don't know who did that calculation, but the 50 last wars that we lived happened with the silencing of the press and the press convincing the opinion to go in one direction.
It's worth saying that when the Barbican cancelled the lecture by Mishra, the London Review of Books tried 10 other places in London before they found somewhere that would agree to have it.
But the Palestinian Festival in New York was the same thing. They found a church last minute. The silencing machine has always been very efficient, and I have witnessed it from such a long time. But today it's very different. You know, it's like it's not just the 6th Gaza massacre. It's beyond. And I think I was asked a few days ago by a friend, but do you think the collectors should have consulted the artist, and what kind of message do you want on the wall? And these curators, it's their first big exhibition. I don't think all this matters. I think what matters now is to not sell arms anymore, to get an urgency fire and to get peace and justice and to listen to what the ICJ said. I think that's the urgency.
Here's Where We Meet is devised by James Lingwood and Michael Morris, co-directors of Artangel from 1991 to 2023. The theme is composed by PJ Harvey. Millie Roberts is the production manager, and Matteo Pini is the editor. Nell Whitaker, Sorab Golsorki-Ainsley, and Thomas Ruche are executive producers. Otomi Larcher is the graphic designer, and Stephen Lewin is the audio engineer. Here is Where We Meet is an original podcast by Tank and is available on all good podcast platforms. The series is dedicated to the memory of John Berger, from whose book of imaginary conversations its title is taken.